What you know about rolling down in the deep? Down in the deep. Now I know y'all be loving this shit right here.
I am so good at pretending. Keep on smiling in my tiny bubble, like a movie without ending. Spending time like it was going backwards. Bruises covering my...
All right, we're here.
Yay.
Yay. It
We
worked.
made
Sorry,
it.
that was very stressful because you're the first one and I want to make sure that we're all good and we're all recording and everything.
I'm
So
sorry that it's stressful, but yay, it's
it's
figured out.
6 a.m. So, it's not like
I
my
know.
best
Oh my
time.
gosh, it's so early for you. I
So
didn't
early.
realize that.
Well, welcome. This has been, I'm like, can't believe you're first because I'm so excited about talking to you. So it's like, oh, I'm not even ready. But welcome. Tell me about Wim Hof, and I want you were just Miyabe was just telling me that they just got out of a freezing cold shower, and they like to do anything that messes with the endocannabinoid system. So tell me more about that, and let's get started.
Okay, so I'll just dive into endocannabinoid system mechanics. Let's just start it off right in the morning on 420.
That's
Also,
it.
happy 420.
Happy 420
Um,
to you.
and the situation here, no censorship?
No censorship.
Cool.
This
So
place is all weed all the time.
this is very special because I've actually been sick, so I haven't smoked in a while, but it's 420. So gotta figure it out. Well,
Yes, she's got a pre-roll all ready to go. I got my bong right here. Wait,
so so the endocannabinoid system is the system in the brain and body that interacts with cannabis. It is way more important than most people think. Way more important. Most people know about serotonin. Most people know about dopamine. Most people have heard of the opioid system, at least in some context. But the endocannabinoid system is, in my opinion, and I am biased because I've spent my whole research career studying it, but it's more important than that. And it regulates all of the other ones. So if I were to break down the endocannabinoid system into three different main tasks, and keep in mind that these are just the three big categories for it. The first category is going to be um, overall brain activity. So the endocannabinoid system regulates the volume of your brain, and it specifically regulates turning the volume down. So for those of us who have really loud and noisy brains, we understand that because
yes,
cannabis turns the volume down, right?
yes, that makes so much sense.
Right. So that's the first thing that the endocannabinoid system does. The second thing the endocannabinoid system does is that it regulates metabolism, specifically fat metabolism, because the endocannabinoid system is a fat based signaling system. It is omega 6 fatty acids, but it also interacts with omega 3 fatty acids. So most people have heard of those. Those are in fish oil, omega 3 is good for you, anti-inflammatory, et cetera, et cetera. That was actually my first research project, was omega 3, omega 6 fatty acids and how it affects inflammation and the immune system, which is number 3. Number 3 is the immune system. So those three things are the big, I like to think of them as the big 3 of what the endocannabinoid system does and controls. And talking about Wim Hof, which is Wim Hof is the Iceman. And he has gone on record, I believe it was a podcast, saying that he believes that the therapeutic effects of his method come from the endocannabinoid system. And every time I think about it, I'm like, I back that up, Vim. Like, I'm 110% on board. There is tons of like molecular level mechanism that I could come up with that where cold exposure and breath work. Those are the two main things in the Wim Hof method. There's more. There's like intentional meditation and stuff, but those are the two things that I think have like the closest links to being able to explain it. And yeah, so I got turned on to Wim Hof by my business partner Andy, and when he told me, I was like, "You got to be fucking kidding me! Like, I'm not gonna take a cold shower. Like, sounds so awful, you know." But then I was like, he was like, "Hear me out. Like, you got to hear me out." And both Andy and I, like my business partner and I, both have a lot of problems. That sounds weird. We we're we're both patients, and we use cannabis every day for our symptoms, and we're both patients of things with which there's no cure. I don't really believe in using the word cure anyways, but um yeah, so he turned me on to Wim Hof, and it's basically cold shower with breath work and like relaxing your muscles while you're doing that. The endocannabinoid system is very closely linked to thermal regulation. Some people might get cold when they smoke weed, and that's normal. I get very cold. Um, Depends on the weed, and it depends on the ratio of THC to other things. It's linked to THC. It's turning on the CB1 receptors will make you cold. So thermal regulation clearly plays a role, but also just in general, like reducing inflammation enhances the endocannabinoid system because everything in our body is like an equilibrium, which means an equilibrium just means balance. But if you think of things as a balance, if you push one thing on like a seesaw, the other side will go down. Like if you push a seesaw down, the other side will go up. And if you push a seesaw up, the other side will go down. And it's the same way with the endocannabinoid system. Cannabis is one way that we can push the endocannabinoid system seesaw. And there are plenty of other ways like fasting and cold exposure and breath work and specific diets like anti-inflammatory diets and yoga and acupuncture. And now I'm just like listing my wellness routine, but and cannabis, like, and also like not the topic for today with topic for yesterday, but psychedelics and serotonergics, also serotonin system and endocannabinoid system, they're married.
So why do you think, thank you for all that. That was great. And cheers, l'chaim. We
Cheers.
say l'chaim at High Curious because l'chaim means to life in Hebrew. And cannabis is more than just for the good times. It's for life. So we say l'chaim instead of cheers.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. So everyone's so happy you're here. You can't see the comments on High Curious because it doesn't come through to the restream. You know, we can't have everything yet. We're a startup. And so everyone's really excited to see you, saying they love cannabis science. Thank you for being here. So yes, agreed. Thank you so much for being here. So we don't even have that much time. So I just want to get into a couple questions. So I guess I wanted to know how long, like when did you start studying? Because I know that the endocannabinoid system is really only discovered in the 90s. And it seems like there's very few scientists really, studying the effects of cannabinoids on the body. And it's so exciting that you and your team are doing it in such a scientific, important way because we need that type of validity in the industry. So thank you for doing that. And so my first question was, when you started using cannabis as a part of your wellness for all of the things that aren't quote unquote normal about you and things like that, because I know I've seen you talk about your neurodivergence and things like that. So what was your family's reaction to that?
Very different reactions depending on what member of my family we're talking about. All right, so let me go back and I'll tell you a history of like why I study cannabis, like what happened, etc. When I first started using cannabis, I didn't know it was medical, but it certainly was. Also, little PSA here, I'm not advocating that people do this. I'm not saying that this is a good thing, but I started smoking cannabis at a really young age. I was in high school. I was a teenager. I think I was 15. Yeah, I'm 50. I was 15. And it changed my life. And it changed my life for the better. That's my perspective on it. I'm well aware that I mean, when I started using cannabis, it was like from the first moment that I experienced it in my brain, I was like, I need more of this. This is relief, which is medical. Um, and it very much so from that moment on was an obsession. One of my many little eccentricities is that I have a very singular special interest type things where like I really get interested in something, and as long as it maintains my interest, I'll stay along with it. And it's been 17 years now. I'm 32. I'm about to turn 32. So it's been 17 years now since I started that interest in cannabis. Hasn't gone away. If anything, it just grows. Um, I started researching the endocannabinoid system 12 years ago. So that was actually a really horrible time in my life, but I'll do it quickly. Also, like, quick trigger warning for people out there like this. It's not like super happy. I'm happy now. I'm stable now. And I would like to encourage everyone to like feel like that's something that you're in control of bringing into your own life. And that's one of the things cannabis gave me that I'm grateful for. But um, I had a really difficult time as an undergrad, and I have a lot of eccentricities and atypicalities, and I have a lot of symptoms and behaviors that I'm very able to mask that are great. It's easier to turn them off when I am stable and not anxious and calm and regulated, and when my life is entirely shaped around my mental health. Then I'm very typical passing, and no one would need to know I have a disability. Um, but if that's not the case, it can very quickly topple off an edge to go into something else. And that happened to me. And I, at the time, could not use cannabis. I was a student athlete in college. And so it wasn't an option. And I was put on prescription medications, and they just kind of kept changing the prescriptions, adding different prescriptions. And I've taken most of the different classes of major psychopharmaceuticals. Some of them are more effective than others, but most of them, and they work for other people too. So, like, I'm happy for you if they work for you. I'm not telling anyone that they don't work. I'm just saying that they did not work for me. They were like very much so not a good thing in my brain. And I ended up just coming to realize that I needed to get off of all of them because it was making things much, much worse, so much worse. And I went and I was like, what is the only thing that's worked for me? And it was this. And I was like, I should go get a medical card then. I'm in California. I should go do that. Um, Against my doctor's wishes, basically cut ties with him and never spoke to him again. Went and got a medical card, used cannabis, got off of all of my medications. I realized that's a really dangerous thing that I did on my own, and that if people are thinking about doing that, please do it with the help of a medical professional. Please find someone who can help you with that, because it's really dangerous. I could have died. Should not have done it that way. But still here. Cannabis helped me. That's like one of many instances of cannabis saving my life, but that's probably the biggest one. And that same time frame when that was happening, an opportunity opened up to work in a laboratory, and I was lucky enough to start working in a lab actually researching what these molecules do. And I had never even heard of the endocannabinoid system before, because no one learns about it. It's absurd. It's like absurd to me that I had to learn about the endocannabinoid system through my very first like research appointment ship. And so then I was like, oh, I'm going to just study this for the rest of my life. And here I am continuing to do
Here we
so.
are 16 years later.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting to hear. I started using cannabis only 4 years ago as a full on adult, and I started using it in microdoses because I was afraid to get too high, but I was very curious about it, because my husband was using it, and he was the first person that was close to me that I was like, this seems like you're good, like you seem great, like
You
why?
seem ideal.
Like, right? Like, what I want in on whatever this is, this good feeling, So I started using like microdoses, but I didn't really know that was a microdose. I didn't know what a microdose was. And I was like, I've been a wellness marketer, my whole, career. So I'm like, wait, this is a wellness supplement. Why isn't anyone talking about it like this? And so that's really why I started High Curious, because I want more people to understand that cannabis is a wellness supplement. And, I think many people who started using it young have some stigma about it. I don't really have the stigma because I was like, I made this grown-up adult choice to use it. And I do find that I don't know, I'm sort of discovering now my neurodivergence and my differences and things like that. Really, when you said that cannabis turns down the volume, wow, that could not be more spot on. I mean, it's like I say that it's like a fire hydrant. My brain is like a fire hydrant. Then like cannabis brings it down to like a hose and then into a small stream, like so that I can actually think, focus, and all of those things. So yeah, everyone is saying that medication made them feel like a zombie, and that cannabis, okay, so and because you said it saved your life, that's what it says on your Instagram. So I wanted to really get clarity on that. Would you say that when you say that, are you saying it because of the depression that you were experiencing, or just the medications that you were on, or is that?
Well, so without going into too much detail about it, because I do think that it's a bit early for that, but I will say that I had known, I mean, from my earliest memories of my brain, and all of my memories of my brain, and how it feels to have a certain brain in society, right? I never saw longevity. In my life, like when I was younger, and when I was young, it's I never foresaw being able to exist in the universe for a long time because it was so fucking difficult. And it just never was a thing that conceptualized to me until I smoked cannabis for the very first time 17 years ago. And I was like, wow, perhaps I could exist here. That was just like, it was just one of the first thoughts of being like, oh, I see how other people exist. This makes sense that it's not so hard. I used to think like, how can people live to 20? How can people live to 30? It didn't make sense to me. I was like, how can that even happen? Like, how can you do this for this long? It's so painful. And
Wow.
And then, so that was like the beginning, and it's been like a really long struggle. It's still something I struggle with now. I'm not a different person now than I was. Well, hold on. I'm a very different person now than I was in any point before, but I am the same person in the sense that if I'm not cured by any means, like, right? My entire life is based around maintaining my mental health and therefore my physical health, because there's tons of physical comorbidities that come with neurodiversity. That part's also not really well talked about or well discussed with within the endocannabinoid system. And that's just, I've never really talked a ton about this. Thanks for asking. Most people, I talked about it, but anyways, yeah, thanks for asking about it.
I know most people probably talk to you about all the science stuff, but I'm really curious about the combination of the two,
Totally.
And that's actually what Jess Riley said, that Miyabe's personal experience combined with their content combined with their knowledge makes their content fire. And it's so true. And so I guess we don't have a lot more time. So I want to ask you one more question, which is like, how did you get started with your content, in terms of like, in the beginning I was like, oh, the person with the little models, and now everyone knows you as the person who's really breaking cannabis down for the lay person, for the non-scientist, and helping us be able to talk about it with our friends and family who aren't cannabis people. So thank you so much for that. And keep going. But like, how did you decide you were going to get started with the models and this storytelling around this, and what's been that evolution, and how has that been for you?
Oh, this one is okay, I'm going to keep it brief. I have like a real tendency with storytelling and things to like want to go down all the intricate little pathways of being like, well, I did this because of this. And it's like, I want to have
a whole app so that I could tell everyone all my things.
Oh my my gosh, I want to put parentheses at the end of every sentence that I say to be like, but then I need to give context for that last thing that I said. So let me make an effort here to like be succinct. Okay. So my business partner and I, Andy, the reason why we started our company at all, and the reason why we were working together at all, was because we bonded a lot over this, right? Cannabis, the medical benefits of it, it is a wellness, it is very much so a wellness thing. It is very much so something that has medicinal value. And after we were talking, you got talking more and more. I mean, he was so scientifically interested, which by the way, people don't have to be science people. I don't think that anyone is a science person. Well, that's not true. I think everyone is a science person, but everyone is a science person as long as you're curious. Like curiosity is what makes a scientist. It's nothing more. It's not about the level of like jargon or vocabulary that you've learned, and it's not about your ability to work with numbers, because like you can describe science without numbers, which I know most people are like, oh my god, no you can't. And it's like, yes you can. You don't need a number anywhere in science, because a lot of people don't like numbers. That doesn't mean that they're not scientists, and it doesn't mean that they're not curious. And now I'm on a tangent. Okay, so Andy is like scientist. He's a scientist now. I mean, we've been working together for a while now, and he was always a scientist then, though, too. And so, Andy and I got to talking, and we have so much in common in terms of having invisible disabilities, chronically working towards things that we're working on within ourselves. And one thing that we noted, for better or for no, not for better or for worse, we did note that the industry didn't seem to be being driven by medical patients. It was something that we both just talked about. We were like, hey, have you noticed that like the stuff that is being sold in the industry, and that the innovations that are being made in the industry like don't support what you and I have just been talking about as like the biggest therapeutic value for the plant? And we got to talking about that, and we started our company. This is something that I never thought that I would be able to do. I never thought I'd have the opportunity to research the things that I think about the plant that are better and potentially improve them, and to help other people by making new options available and all of these things. I mean, it's a really overwhelming opportunity to have had. But, at the end of the day, the reason why we did it was because when I talked to Andy about it, he was like, his mind was blown, and him and I went back and forth exchanging different things. We tried different things. We learned from each other and from our experiences, and from like all of our other personal friends that we had talked to about this, and friends and family and community. And we came to like this big thing where it was like, why doesn't everyone know this? And that also everyone like needs to know this. Everyone needs to feel empowered, because to have control over it and to be able to understand and know certain aspects of cannabis science helps you to understand and know yourself, and to understand and know how you can use cannabis intentionally and somewhat methodically, so that you can better like control a reliable and responsible medical experience. Because as you said about people who've used younger and like having like a different mindset of it, I totally agree, because cannabis was part of the prohibition. So we are going through a major shift in what is we're still in the prohibition. People forget that. We should legalize it 420. But like we are still in the prohibition right now. And so when it came to doing that, Andy, everyone who likes my content should probably thank my business partner, Andy Westerkamp, because I was like, nah, like I didn't have any social media at all, actually. Most people don't really know that. I had a Reddit account. And
That's so funny.
and I was like a big time lurker too. I mean, I had posted some stuff, but like I don't know, I didn't have any social media and whatever. And but then Andy and I got to talking, and I was presenting. I went to the American Chemical Society cannabis subdivision last year, and I was giving a talk, and I gave a talk, a research presentation at the American Chemical Society's virtual event, and I gave a talk on hemp cannabis, including low trace amounts of THC and benefits specifically for mental health. And in the talk, I disclosed that I talked about my personal experience, and I did this, and that was the first time that I ever did that at like any research event, but to do it at like a national research conference event was like a huge thing for me personally. And Andy was so proud of me. And like, and we were just talking about it. And I was saying, like, I really want to help other people like feel what I'm feeling right now. And then like, I've been open about my mental health professionally now since I think the last year of my PhD. And the number of other scientists and other professional people that once I'm open with them, then return with openness about themselves is huge. And that's true not for it and just everywhere, not just for scientists. But um it's only ever led to positive things, at least for me, in terms of ripples of like community and visibility and safety, because there's safety in community, you know? And this community, cannabis for mental health specifically, hasn't had one really. And also just maybe just cannabis medicine, it's growing, right? Because we're still in the prohibition. And yeah, I mean, I was just kind of like, okay, like and I was experimenting with how I wanted to do it. And when I first, like, if you go way back in my Instagram, it's weird because I was just trying different things. Um, and I had Instagram first. I mean, I started on Reddit. I actually have a long series of posts on Reddit that are like very long written things that that's my favorite form. I like to write, but not everyone likes to read. So
There's that.
yeah. So I was doing that for a while and then I was like, oh, and I was like, it's not actually, I mean, it was definitely really interesting, lots of interesting discussion. And I'm still on Reddit a lot. Um, but then I started making an Instagram because I was like, oh, I like pictures too. Like maybe I should try pictures and like do pictures. And then I made a video, like I think it was like a month into doing Instagram, which I was like, oh, I'll make a video, post it to my story, and I'll see because So actually, it's funny. This model was the first one in the early videos. If you go all the way back and look at it, I didn't have a model set. I literally only had THC. Like I didn't have a whole model set left. I mean, what, I'm gonna keep the whole thing? No, I like only kept it was like a display thing that I like had because I like love the way the molecule looks. But so I made him. I was like, oh, I know what I can do. I can just show that if you break this bond right here, you get CBD, and I'll block the part that's different so that I can explain it later if someone cares. And oh man, yeah. So then I made that video, and my wife is like, "Hey, is that video less than 60 seconds long?" And I was like, "Yeah." And Lane was like, "Oh, you got to post it on TikTok." And I was like, nah. Like I was like, I'm already doing a lot of stuff, you know? Like I'm personally on Reddit. That's the one that I personally use. Now I have this Instagram thing. Like, this is a lot for me. Like, I was like, no. And Lane was like, well, you should just like try it though, because it's the video thing. Like, that's what videos are. And like how hard would it be? And I was like, I guess you're right. I guess it's not that hard. So also thank Andy and thank my wife, I suppose. Well, not I suppose, for sure.
For sure. Our partners are the ones who push us to do the things, right?
How crazy. This is an interesting thing that you might just find interesting about brains, or just a brain thing in general. But both Lane and Andy are really talented improv melody musicians. Lane plays the violin and Andy plays the lead guitar. And I am a rhythm like accompaniment instrumentalist for like
your
guitar and
brains
piano.
are all like working together.
Yeah, it's
cool.
such an interesting, that's been like an interesting thing or whatever. But then then TikTok happened, and that was like another whirlwind chapter, and then everything spiraled from there.
Well, you're killing it. Congrats. We're gonna have to switch over because we have Atia waiting in the green room. But this has been so incredible talking to you. Thank you for your time. Happy 420. Like, I could talk to you all day. I'm sure everyone feels the same way because everyone who saw that you were coming on was like, oh my God, I have to set my alarm for Miyabe. So, I wish we had more time, and I'd love to continue the conversation and talk about how we might work together. Hi Curious allows people to build their platform off of regular social media and monetize their more premium content. So that's what we do, as well as help brands make better content faster, basically going live for an hour and then cutting down little pieces for brands. So those are the things that we do. But we love following you. Thank goodness for you. Like, thank you for doing the work you're doing. Keep talking and yelling from the rooftops and TikTok and Instagram and all the places, because it's like the people need to know what this plant can do. And we are, as you've been saying, we're just scratching the surface. So, and isn't it the best being at the beginning?
I mean, I think it's exciting. It's a lot like, I mean, forging new ground, like it's a lot like when you're on a hike and you're on a hike that you know really well. It's like, that's great, but there's nothing like seeing a beautiful view for the first time that you haven't seen before. So
Wow.
that's, I guess, how
So
I feel
well
about it.
said.
But thank you so much
Exactly.
for having me. And I would love to do something more on this. Actually, Mental Health Awareness Month is next month, so we'll talk.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure. Everyone says thank you. They also said tangents can be great, and there's a lot of parentheses. So thank you so much for your time, Miyabe, and we will see you hopefully soon.
All
Have a
right, bye,
great
everyone.
420.
Happy 420.
Bye-bye. All right, Atia, I'm about to bring you up. I know you can see me, but yep, hello. So let me just hide here. And yes, thank you, Dr. Miyabe. This was excellent. It was excellent. So, all right, let's bring up Atia. Hello, Atia.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you?
I'm still a little sick. I don't know if it's COVID or what it is, but yeah, I've been sick for almost a week, over a week now. So hopefully, whatever it is goes away relatively soon.
Whew, I hope so too. I hope so too. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
Would you like to introduce yourself, and then I'll just head off so you can do your thing. But I'm so excited to meet you. Happy 420.
Happy 420.
And yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about you, and then I'll leave.
Yeah, so I reached out to Lauren to join this event because I've been in the cannabis industry in Canada for a couple of years now. So I'm here to represent the Canadian cohort, blunts and beaver tails, baby. So beaver tails are actually something that we eat. It's not an actual beaver tail, but it is a classic Canadian food. It's this like deep fried round thing with tons of toppings on top. It's delicious. So I've been in the cannabis industry for a while, but very recently, in the last year and a half, I actually started my own international cannabis consulting company. So we help clients with things from all over the map. We start with cultivation. We help them with post-harvest processing, finishing up their processed products, and getting the product out to market. So we help with anything that we say is basically plant touching, because my entire team is plant scientists who also have a background in highly regulated industries. And we've come together to kind of take all of our experience in manufacturing and commercial production, our backgrounds in plant science, and come together to help cannabis producers make the best product possible.
I love it. And what's the name of your company?
AgCan Consultancy, AGCANN Consultancy.
Beautiful. Thank you.
No problem.
Amazing. So from Canada, you're going to be talking to us about plant science and what you do. What I'm going to do is just because you can't see all the comments, you can only see the comments that are from like LinkedIn and YouTube. And I'll put them, if you see how I put them on, I put it on the screen right there.
Yes.
So you'll be able to see those comments.
Okay.
And I'll just drop them in from the other place. So if you just see them on there and it looks like it's me or whatever, it's from other people, just not from me. All right.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, and feel free to go to the top of the hour and a little bit over if you need to. And I'll just pop in when, around the top of the hour, like, hey, I'm back.
Sounds good. Perfect.
All right. Bye. I will see you on the other side. Enjoy.
See you in a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, thanks everybody. So for everyone joining me, my name is Atia Feroz. I go by Tia. That's kind of commonly what people refer to me as. And like I mentioned, I'm an international cannabis consultant. So right now I am in Canada. I am in beautiful Southwestern Ontario, which is where I live for about half of the year. The other half of the year, though, I actually spend in Europe with most of my clients. So I'm back and forth every 6 to 8 weeks. So if any of you have any questions about the European cannabis industry, I've been really involved in that. So feel free to ask them. But my background is very interesting. I started off as a plant geneticist. I got my master's in genetic engineering and plant tissue culture. And then I started working in the food industry. And I worked in the food industry, became a dairy technical specialist, did a lot of quality assurance there. And after that, I had kind of heard about the cannabis industry starting up. Now, I've been a personal cannabis user for a very long time now. So the prospect of actually working with a product that I really believed in, that I had a long history with, became something that I got really excited about. And my first job in cannabis was as a cannabis tissue culture lab manager at a medical production facility in Ontario. After that, I took on several different roles. And if you've worked in cannabis before, you'll know that any time you spend a year in cannabis, it's about equivalent to 4 to 7 years in any other industry, which I believe is completely true. I had experience in quality assurance, in operations, in regulatory affairs, in cultivation, post-harvest processing, sales, business development, marketing, you name it. So did kind of a little bit everything all over the map. And then that's when I decided to open my own consulting company, because I really wanted to take all of that experience that I had, and also my background coming from food quality assurance, made it really easy for me to transition into doing these activities in cannabis. And so our team has been really successful at getting clients internationally. I do love Canada, don't get me wrong, this is my home, but I'm so fascinated by international markets. We take on clients in Australia, Europe, all over the United States. And for us, I think for me as like a big regulatory nerd, digging into all the different regulations and seeing how other countries are approaching legalization has been the most fascinating for me. So we do offer a lot of services where, we help clients with their production process, but a big backbone of that is making sure that it's compliant with whatever regulations and quality assurance, levels they're trying to meet. Right now, of course, with Europe coming online, EU GMP is a very big area. If you don't know what that is, it's European Good Manufacturing Practices. And basically, if you're planning on selling product into many European countries, this is a requirement that you have this license or certification, I should say. So we help a lot of producers kind of get in line with that, get all the documentation that they need. In addition to the team that we have being really fantastic, we have a lot of great partners that we work with who are also like just awesome consultants that we deal with. We love so much, and they help with everything else. So we have consultants that we work with that do builds. We have consultants that we work with that will, do extractions. So we really do cover everything from start to finish. And for me, as somebody who loves learning all the time, that's been the best part about consulting. Every new client, every new project, it's a new challenge. It's a new chance to learn. It's a new industry to conquer and learn, fun facts about. And also, I love to travel. So spending 6 months of the year in Europe is definitely not too bad. I spend most of my time in Switzerland. I was just in Barcelona, but any of you, if you're going to Green Tech in Amsterdam, which is a very big horticulture conference, this is the first year you're doing a medical cannabis pavilion, AgCan will have a booth. I will be there. Please come by and say hi. I would love to meet any of you in person. So when I spoke to Lauren, about today, I said, what do you want me to talk about? And she kind of said, it's sort of a show and tell. So talk about whatever you'd like. And for me, it's really difficult to pick just one thing about cannabis that I love. So I just thought we could kind of journey through a few different things, sort of from plant to product, kind of like my version of a stream of plant science consciousness, I guess, and talk about some of the things that happen along the way. So one thing I definitely want to start off with is our good friend, the cannabis plant. And for me, as a plant scientist, and personally as somebody who's grown on their own and also grown, grow rooms as large as 36,000 plants, which, trust me, is very different than growing 4 plants in your backyard. I love everything about what's going into it. There's so much research on the cultivation side. There are so many different companies that are doing fantastic work on looking at lighting developments, looking at different kind of fertilizer combinations, all that good stuff. And we're seeing constantly like new research. So I think that's all good and well. But what I find so interesting still is that many people will use the term indica, sativa, or hybrid to describe product. And the reason why I find that so fascinating, and this is all over the map. I mean, this is in Canada, California, Colorado, the EU. Everyone is still using these terms so heavily. So what is the history really behind these terms? So Actually, it wasn't until 1753, even though cannabis had been around for thousands of years, that Carl Linnaeus, the father of modern taxonomy, which is just the gentleman who decided that we were going to use Latin names for species and start them off in the exact format that they are in right now, he actually published Cannabis sativa in his work Species Plantarum. So that was the first time it was really noted or mentioned. And then it wasn't until 1785 that our boy, Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, who I just love because I find like the Lamarck theory of evolution like very interesting, but also like funny now, like to look at it retrospectively, but that's another whole other hour I could do on that. But he described cannabis indica in his work, and I'm Canadian, but my French is not that good. Encyclopédie méthodique du botanique. So my one friend who like is super fluent in French, I'm sure, is like messaging me right now to say that I butchered that, but that's what it was called. And so this was the first two times we had really seen these words, you know, out there, and they had described two very different plants. And I've done those air quotes for a reason. Now, in modern use of the terms on the cultivation side of things, you'll find that the word sativa plants are for those that are taller, have more narrow leaves, and are typically a lighter green color. And the word indica is used for plants that are shorter, have wider leaves, and have a darker green color. I've worked with many growers that will say, oh, you know, this plant has more of like an indica presentation, and what they typically mean it's a bushier, shorter plant, or oh, it's more sativa leaning, they see more stretch. So those have become two different morphologies, essentially, that we've observed in cultivation, or that's how it's been used. Now, on the product side of things, the idea is that if a plant has a sativa morphology or an indica morphology, that the product itself will yield different types of flower. So on the product side of things, sativa plants are supposed to yield flower that is more energetic, provides a more uplifting experience. If you go into dispensaries and you say, hey, I'm looking for something to, you know, I get a lot of work done or I need a lot of energy, they'll usually say, okay, try sativa. On the indica side of things, the plant is supposed to yield flower that provides a more relaxing and sedative effect. So if you say that I'm looking for something to help me sleep, or I'm looking for something to help me at the end of the night, or I want something that, you know, I want couch lock, I want to sit on the couch and hang out for a really long period of time, you'll normally get recommended a sativa. Now, the actual classification of cultivars as indica, sativa, and hybrids is an extremely hotly debated topic, in part because there are plant scientists who believe that there's actually only one species, Cannabis sativa L, and that all of these other things that we're seeing are just subspecies, or that even, you know, because the plant was growing in such different environments when they were first discovered, that what we're seeing really is just their adaptation to the environment. So this is not something that all plant scientists agree on. There is no real agreement that indica and sativa are two different species. In addition, there have been several other species that have been proposed that haven't really gotten as much traction. Just within the last 100 years, there was a new proposed species called Cannabis ruderalis, and only some of you would be familiar with that. And it was proposed by a Russian scientist, I believe in the 1920s or late 1910s. And it's not something that you would really hear about very often, but he also believed that this was another variety, although this was grown in Russia. Well, it was found in Siberia, so it was grown in a much colder region and had a different type of morphology. So again, is it a true species? Is this just what this species behaves like in different environmental factors? We already know that plants will respond differently to their environment. You've seen cannabis plants that we force a purple color out, or more anthocyanins in the later part of the flower. You've seen how we can cause more stretch using different light spectrums. So really, how much of this is actually down to genetics? So where do I sit on this debate? Personally, I don't use the terms indica and sativa, and it's not because I've done like decades of research and I can definitively say, you know, these are two different, you know, not these are two distinct species or not. But I just don't like to use them, and I have stopped using them completely. People ask me all the time. I post on Reddit or I post on Instagram about products that I'm using, and people always ask, oh, do you like indicas or sativas? And then unfortunately, they've looped themselves into me like talking about this basically, about the fact that I don't use those terms. And the reason is that I don't believe that the morphology of the plant can be truly indicative of the effects the product will produce, basically. So I'm a firm believer that the only way to really tell a product's effects is by the metabolite profile. And that is, you know, what cannabinoids does it have inside of it, at what values, what terpenes does it have inside of it, at what values. So unfortunately, due to criminalization, cannabis research is decades behind where it could have been. I mean, I think all of us who are here for a 420 event can agree that cannabis never should have been illegal at any point in time. And for me, I mean, there's lots of horrible things that have happened from that, of course. There's tons of people who are still in prison for something. It makes no sense to me whatsoever that I can, smoke cannabis, I can eat edibles every night before bed, and I can go around the world consulting people on this, and there are people still in prison all over in different countries. But one of the other things that happen from a scientific perspective is that we are really far off from where we need to be. Yes, this problem in Canada and several other countries, but the amount that we know about it is very little into some of the other cultivated crops that have been around for the same length of time. Cannabis did not benefit from traditional breeding systems and tons of research. So we are just now uncovering information on the effects of CBG, the effects of CBN. We're noticing that in many studies, there haven't really been that many high THC or high potency cultivars that have undergone research. So there isn't like an exact, like if you have this cannabinoid, it's going to feel this way, or this terpene, it's going to feel this way, unfortunately. But, that is something that we're trying to move towards in the scientific community. We're trying to kind of get to the point of, we're not looking at three different, distinct categories, indica, sativa, and hybrids. We want people to start picking products as more information comes out on the terpene profiles. Maybe certain terpene profiles and cannabinoid profile combinations are better for glaucoma. They're better for anxiety. They're better for those effects that you're looking for. Another reason personally why I don't like to use those terms is that thanks to centuries of human intervention and the fact that even though cannabis was, criminalized in many countries, people have been breeding it and growing it, in the back basically, for a very long time. And this has led to a really high level of interbreeding. So not all of which has been tracked and traced accordingly. This means a few things on the consumer side. So number one, we're basically swimming in a sea of hybrids. It's very unlikely that you'll ever get a true sativa or a true indica because we've had so much crossing over the years. Although the benefit of crossing is that we have much higher potency cultivars. I mean, there's so many studies that have shown that, the cannabis they smoked in the 70s was like very low potency, like 5 to 12%, if I'm remembering that correctly. And now we're looking at, 20 to 30% right now. And I know that from personal experience because I remember when I first got into cannabis, one of my friend's dads was like, hey, can you get me some cannabis? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, what do you want? And he was like, yeah, just some good stuff. So I bought it for him. I rolled him up all in the joints. I left it with him. A few weeks later, I saw him again and he said, whoa. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, that is not what we smoked like back in the 70s. And I was like, what do you mean? I always assumed they had really high potency cultivars, but the development of high potency cultivars and the use of more sinsemilla or female only non-pollinating cannabis varieties, which is how we get the high potency, is relatively recent. So you're probably getting a mix of something, a hybrid. You're not really getting, a distinct species. And the second thing is that for most cultivars, there's no standard. So there isn't, okay, if you're buying Blueberry Dream, it's always going to be the same all the time. If you buy it from 10 different producers, you could very well get very different metabolomic profiles or the amounts of metabolites of different, cannabinoids, terpenes, etc. Assays done in Canada have actually found that if you do buy the same variety or same cultivar from multiple different producers, you're actually going to get quite a big mix. So there's evidence to back this data from doing metabolomics assays on cultivars put out under the same name. So there isn't really any way to be 100% sure without doing testing that, number one, that your cultivar is what it says it is. And number two, the only way to really determine that is to kind of go with the majority rule. So if you and 10 other producers get together and test your products and 80% of you kind of have this sort of metabolomics profile, we'll sort of have to assume that that's the correct one. And not to mention, of course, between batch to batch, there are already a ton of fluctuations, depending on the cultivation factors, the drying and the curing. Is it indoor? Is it controlled environment? Even in a greenhouse, for example, you'll get a big swing between your winter and your summer, depending on how controlled the environment is. So there are a lot of factors with cannabis. And as somebody who works in Canada and the European markets, many of places which we're trying to sort of make it more like a pharmaceutical product, which it is. It has a lot of benefits. It's got a lot of medicinal purpose. I use it for medicinal purposes myself, but it's got a lot of different things that we kind of are saying, okay, this is like a medicine for people, which it is. But let's remember that it's a plant. Let's remember that it's not going to be the same batch after batch. One thing that we try really hard with our consulting group is to help you do that, is to help control as many confounding variables as you can to make a consistent product time after time. But we're still really well aware as plant scientists that there's always going to be a bit of fluctuation. I could go into hours of this, but there are just so many different things, from epigenetic stress and other things that happen during the cultivation life cycle, even the type of system that we use for the most of cannabis cultivation, which is mother plants to clones. That's a whole other again, a whole other like hour-long discussion, but there's lots of variety that gets introduced here. So we need to have a general range of what we can expect from the product. And if you do alter your cultivation conditions, you can actually really heavily influence what it will display. So what is a cannabis lover to do? After I've told you all of this, you're probably sitting here thinking, so what exactly are you recommending? I recommend try them all. My solution to this problem is the silver lining here. Try as many cannabis products as you can. You will find the ones that give you what you are looking for. Keep a little journal, make some notes on how you feel, make some notes on what effects are coming to light. Also, don't forget that products that you use, especially with edibles, for example, they can have different effects depending on when the last time you ate. It's kind of similar to taking alcohol, right? There are other like pharmacological effects that happen depending on what's in your system already, how tired you are, what you've had for the day as a meal. So keep that in mind, but you'll find over time, and I'll be honest, this is more likely that you'll find it in a legal market like Canada, where you can find the actual metabolomic profile. It'll tell you at least the top 5 terpenes for many producers and the cannabinoid profile. I personally only buy from producers or lean towards producers that will list that information. One example that I have handy, one second. There we go. So this is actually from Ghost Drops, which is a Canadian brand. They're very, very popular. They actually specialize in really high potency cultivars, but also really high terpene cultivars. This is a jar of First Class Funk. I think I only have like one bud left. Yeah, I have one bud left from here. This is a really fantastic product. And on the back, they've actually listed the top 5 terpenes as limonene, caryophyllene, farnesene, beta-myrcene, and terpenol. So I really like to have this information. And yes, I completely agree that more people need to advertise this information. It's not even in Canada very publicly available. You won't find every brand putting this information out there, but it needs to be. I think that it's so key for understanding your experience and finding the products you like. Personally, I like a lot of limonene and I like a lot of myrcene. So I lean towards strains that have high values for those. These are also called the fruitier strains. And I know that a lot of people say like, oh, that's, like something that only certain types of people like, which I'll agree with. I know that some people really like that more peppery caryophyllene, and that's fine. Pick the strains that work well for you. Even though I do like the fruitier strains, I am definitely also really obsessed with diesels or really gassy profiles, and I love a good cheese strain. I love blue cheese in general, just for like eating. So those really pungent, kind of funky cheese strains. This is actually a pretty funky one. It's called First Class Funk, like I said, and it has this like kind of, I don't know, this like funky, kind of like a gym locker sort of smell. I can't explain it, but a little bit fruity. But yeah, I love that because that's what I like. And so my advice, if you're really kind of lost, is if you have a chance to smell it, if you like the smell of it, then use it. That's what I go with. If I don't like the smell of something, there are some of the strains that I know have that kind of more, like, for lack of a better term, that cat pee smell. I have a cat and I smell his cat pee almost every day, and that's a big no-no for me. So I don't smoke those strains. And there are thousands of varieties. So pick the one that you like. If you have the opportunity to smell a couple or try some for your friends, that's usually my go-to. I smell it. If it smells good, I'll try it. That's great. And then if I like it, I kind of put it on my list of things that I buy again, and I buy from the same producer consistently because I'm less likely to get variation if I'm, stick with the same producer over time. But taxonomy debate aside, I absolutely love this plant. I think that it has so many benefits. There are just so many, areas we haven't uncovered. Like, as a plant scientist and somebody who is, really fixated on, I think Miyabe mentioned it really perfectly, but I'm a curious person. I am the kind of person who has, way too many hobbies. I just had to put my trumpet away behind me. I want to know how everything works. I am obsessed with learning more. Cannabis is like the perfect field for me. I did not know I was going to end up in cannabis. And the funniest part for me by far is just like that I used to use cannabis and people would always tell me that it was like going to be some kind of like problem, or that it wasn't going to, really, benefit me in any way, shape, or form. And here I am now getting to work with a plant I love. My friends find it absolutely hilarious that I work in cannabis. They're just like, dream job. Like, this is your dream job. And it really is. And also now that edibles have come online, because I'm a huge foodie with a background in food science, I'm always trying new edibles and posting reviews on them because this is very fascinating for me. So I think that as we progress more in the field, we're going to get some more data. If you are in a state or an area where it's legal, you need to help push to say, hey, We want more terpene information. Message the producers that you are buying from and say, look, we'd like this available. Maybe they can't put it on the label. There are some restrictions in some places, but we're seeing in Canada, some people are actually posting the full certificate of analysis online. That means the full, cannabinoid profile, a list of, 25 terpenes broken down. So you can actually go for each batch of product that you buy. You can look up the lot code and you can go online and grab that data. And those are the producers that really have my heart, because I think they're doing their best to be transparent about their process and educate people, which I love doing about cannabis. So yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for your time. I have like hours of stuff that I could chat about, but I don't want to suck up the day. I know we have lots of other fantastic presenters. So yeah, if you have any final questions, toss them in and I'll do my best to try and answer them.
Cool. I'm coming up with you so that we can finish it out together. So it's hard to see the comments on Hi Curious, so I just wanted to tell you about everyone was loving it. There was a question about your impetus for your educational path, and I think you answered that one really well. Yes, and then Chiba Chica said more dispensaries need to show the different terps instead of just percentages of THC. They love the descriptions they were talking about. I love the descriptions of all of what you were talking about, but especially the cat pee. And then Dan K said that sour tangy is his turn off, that pinene limonene combo. And I it's really interesting because tangy also gives me a headache. And I wonder if it is like a terpene sandwich that doesn't work well for me.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah.
And so how long have you been like talking about the difference, like this whole busting the indica sativa myth, because you do such a great job with it, and we're always talking about that here. So how long have you been talking about that, and like what do you say, what's your, like, when someone's like indica sativa, do you want an indica or sativa when you like go to like a dispensary? How do you educate back on that? Because I think that'd be really helpful for people.
So I think like a big part of it is like I have probably stopped using indica sativa in the past 3 years. So I definitely was somebody who used them. Like if you asked me when I was 20, like what strains I always say I like sativas because I like things that are uplifting. I like things that are energizing. It wasn't until I really started digging in the past few years to like all the updates and all the new science and stuff. And that's the thing about cannabis. Never feel bad that you don't know something. We don't know like 99% about this plant. There's new data coming out all the time. And so what I try to do is just keep abreast of the new information and the new data that's coming out. So usually if somebody asks, if they want to have an indica or sativa, my best recommendation is to say, what effects are you looking for? Are you looking to be energized? Are you looking to be, sleepy? And then I can tell them from my personal experience what strains I've used. I think that bud tenders at a lot of these facilities and dispensaries, they're so knowledgeable because many of them try almost all the products in the store in their free time. So they have a ton of data. Unfortunately, in Canada, they're not actually allowed to ascribe any effects to the product. That is actually not allowed. So it can be a little bit more difficult. But fun fact, a number of bud tenders have Instagram accounts where they actually post product reviews. I post product reviews. There's an OCS, which is Ontario Cannabis Store, but there's one for every province. There's a Reddit stream of people just posting product reviews. So just like I never buy anything. I don't buy anything without reading a product review. I won't buy a vacuum. I won't buy a hair product. I won't buy anything without reading reviews. There are so many reviews. If you go into a store and they recommend a strain to you, you can just Google that, look for reviews in your area, and it will tell you. There will be dozens or hundreds of other people that say, hey, I smoked this. I was really sleepy. I smoked this and, it was, made me really wake up. And yes, there is a person-to-person difference, but that I think is still a better guide than just kind of looping things in. Also, I have worked in commercial cannabis. I have brokered bulk deals for sale. People will relabel their strains. I have definitely had strains where the grower has said, this is more indica leaning. And then the client has said, well, I want a hybrid. And we say, okay, well, it's more indica. And they say, we're just going to label it a hybrid. We're just going to label it a sativa. They are just trying to provide to the consumer what the consumer is asking for. And I appreciate that we need to provide what the consumer is asking for, but the industry needs to educate the consumers. High THC is not the only marker of product quality. We need to, move towards people are losing their livelihoods because their strains are coming out at 18% and they can't hit that arbitrary 20% mark. There's no scientific reason why 20% is a better value. So I do appreciate that we're selling things. We have to give the customer what they want. But if we're sitting here and we're altering, if it's indica sativa or hybrid anyways, willy-nilly at our will, let's work towards educating people. Let's put more cannabis education out there. And as the consumers become more educated, we can help drive the market more to where it needs to be. So I think what I need is from two sections here. I need consumers to be a little bit more canna curious, want to get some more information. There are people posting on TikTok, Instagram, Reddit. If you're looking for cannabis information, it's out there. Try to be an active consumer. And the second thing we need is for more of the people in the other side of the industry, the producers, the retailers, to start pushing that as well. So I'm happy to host an education session for any retailers that want to educate their staff on the fact that those are not actually differences in indica and sativa.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. We all need to be doing our education, whether,
Yes.
wherever we go with it, whether it be with people that we, just talk to or when we're in a dispensary. And it feels sort of weird to like, when I go into a dispensary, I try to help, like, I don't know, I use my language to like kind of help the bartenders, elevate their language sometimes because they want to, everyone wants to advance,
Yes.
but the consumer tends to hold us back.
Yes.
But
that's true in any industry. Like even when I worked in food, there are times when the consumers decide that, a certain ingredient is basically not in vogue. They've decided that that's a dangerous ingredient, even if there's no scientific data backing this whatsoever. Right. We're like frantically reformulating products and taking the ingredient out. And it's because that's how our world works, especially right now in the world of reviews, in the world of social media, where anyone has a platform to get up and say, I tried this product and it made me sick, even if there's no data behind it. We are at the mercy of the consumers. But I think that we need to really focus on changing the narrative. I teach professionally at a cannabis college in Canada, the Academy of Applied Pharmaceutical Sciences. So I'm very big into cannabis education. And I just think it's interesting. Like, I just think it's fascinating. I could listen to days and days worth of cannabis lectures. And I'm trying to make sure that more of that information is available. I'm working on trying to make some more webinars for free to sort of dispel this information. I think all of us need to try to find some time to do our part to move the industry forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why I built High Curious, was for there to be a place for people to actually explore their curiosity around cannabis. Because if you go on most social media platforms, are very limited in terms of what we can say, what we can talk about,
that is very
product
true.
Demonstrations that we do and things like that. So we're really watering down our like cannabis science, where, in our cannabis knowledge, because there's not a lot, like we don't want to get in trouble for saying words that like cannabis. Yes. So this is one of the reasons why I built this platform, so that we can bring people from mainstream platforms here so that they can learn about cannabis in an uncensored, unfettered way. So
yeah, and that's a fantastic point. And I apologize I didn't mention it, but of course, High Curious, another platform to get a lot of your great information from. I will try to post some stuff on there as well this year. I have definitely had content taken down on TikTok. I just started using it, and I'm atrocious at it. But I've had videos banned, and it is aggravating. And you're exactly right. If you can't talk about it properly, you can't use the correct terms, and you're feeling like you have to censor yourself, you can't show product, you can't show anything, that is going to really limit the quality of the information that you get. So very fantastic point. And I look forward. I just downloaded the High Curious app yesterday, so I'm super excited to partake in the community.
Yay, amazing. Well, we're super glad you're here. I have one last question that I'm curious about, because you were talking about, indica sativa, and I think about strain names and how like strain names, I remember when I first started using cannabis thinking that strain names were like a little ridiculous. And like now that I'm into cannabis and I like understand the growers, and I understand like what tangy means and what, whatever means, what it all means, but it is like, it's a little language in and of itself.
Yep.
And then, so now there's like indica sativa, there's the strains, there's terpenes. So I don't know if you were to figure out how to if you could break it down and build it back up, how would you classify cannabis?
So there have been a couple classification systems proposed. There is one based on chemotype, which we use a lot. So when I do tissue culture for cannabis, we've noticed a really big difference in chemotype. And that means that high THC cultivars versus balanced cultivars that are like 50-50 for THC and CBD versus high CBD cultivars, they actually behave differently in response to tissue culture. So most of the papers that were published were on hemp, which were obviously high CBD. And when we tried to replicate all those protocols in high THC, we saw a really big difference. So that classification system is one that would, be good for the cannabinoid side. But I think the same kind of breakdown into sort of maybe some major parent categories for the terpenes, because there are certain terpenes that are kind of, commonly found together. So kind of getting the same sort of like a chemo type, but on the version of the terpene side would be beneficial. Again, I just think like as more research comes out, I know they've already had research on, certain terpenes have better anti-inflammatory effects. Certain, terpenes have better neuropsychotic effects. So the more information we get on that, it would be really nice that either your product could kind of go into a ranking system of like, it means this color stars for this kind of chemotype, this kind of like profile, and we can build maybe 6 or 7 key terpene profiles that are, these kinds of combinations together in these ratios, and use that as a baseline. But I think we're quite far off from that. Like I said, right now, just try everything. Just try everything.
Yeah,
I buy new stuff every month. I buy a haul of like new edibles and new products, and I just plow my way through them. And then I find ones that I like, I make a little check mark, and I buy them again.
I'm the same. So it's been really a pleasure hearing from you, getting to know you. I hope that there will be a lot more of us together figuring out how to learn from you. I'd love to, obviously talk business, not on 420, and figure out how we can, cross collaborate. And I love all the information that you have to share. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks so much for your time, and I'm going to check out some of the other speakers as well. So I'll see you later on in the day.
All right, cool. We'll see you in the comments then.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. All right, everyone. We are going to just flip over to our next stream. So we're going to go off for a minute and come back on. Me and Crystal are going to be demonstrating the Zenko. So come back in literally. I'm just going to come out and come back in. So we've got the Zenko all set right over here. And we're going to Zenko it out, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we'll be right back. Good morning. Good morning. We'll be right back.